Japanese ancestry got into big trouble when the private school at which he was teaching had a public discussion of the American bombing of Hiroshima. He recalled how, as someone growing up in China, he had rejoiced when he heard of the bombing, knowing that it could deliver his people from the horrors inflicted on them by the Japanese. That, of course, was not the politically correct response, as he soon discovered from the backlash, hostility, and ostracism that eventually culminated in his leaving the school. The anointed do not want anyone upsetting their vision. When they say diversity, this is not what they have in mind. Hiroshima has become one of the many symbols of a countercultural hostility to America among the intelligentsia in general and the revisionist historians in particular. The 50th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, galvanized Newsweek magazine into Monday morning quarterbacking half a century after that Sunday. The revisionist line is that it was unnecessary to bomb Hiroshima. We could have invaded. We could have negotiated.
Look at that. Damn, look at that. All crumbs. Wow.
Negotiated a settlement. We could have done all sorts of things. Newsweek magazine's estimate today is that there might have been 20,000 Americans killed in an invasion of Japan. This is quite a contrast with the estimates of the people who had the heavy responsibility of fighting the war at the time.
It's easy to say when you're sitting in your home and you have a bunch of opinions, but when it comes times like this that we need to make action, you know what trigger you need to push. I mean, what needed to be done needed to be done.
General Douglas MacArthur, who had been selected to command the invasion of Japan before the atomic bomb was tested and shown to work, told Secretary of War Stimson to expect more than 1 million American casualties alone. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill also expected more than 1 million American casualties, together with 500,000 casualties among the British troops who were scheduled to hit the beaches with the Americans.
Damn, 1 million? That would be 2 million. British and Americans?
Anyone familiar with the history of the Japanese soldiers' bitter resistance to the death, very few were captured alive, will have no trouble understanding why such huge casualties were expected. American Marines lost more than 5,000 men taking the little island of Iwo Jima, and the Japanese themselves suffered more than 100,000 deaths when Americans captured Japan's outlying island of Okinawa.
They did not want it to back down. Wow. 100,000 against 5,000? Wow. They were not ready. They were not ready to give up. Wow.
Was more than were killed at Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Newsweek's pushover scenario, which would have had Japan defeated in 90 days, would be funny if it were not so sick. Winston Churchill's estimate to the House of Commons would have had the war with Japan ending in 1946, and the Pentagon's estimate was that Japan might even hold out until 1947. Not only was there a Japanese army which had proven its toughness and skill on many a battlefield, there were 5,000 kamikaze planes ready for suicide attacks on Americans invading their homeland. If these planes managed to take out just 5 Americans each, they alone would have killed more troops than those in Newsweek's rosy scenario. Japan's civilian population, including children, were also being mobilized and trained in suicide attacks on enemy troops and tanks. It would have been one of the great bloodbaths of all.
Wow, Japan? Really? Japan? Wow, that's crazy. It reminds me of Vietnam. Of course, a communist dictatorship back then in the 1960s, but damn, Japan really that far. Wow.
All time. Of course, Japan could have been defeated without the atomic bomb, but at what cost in lives of people killed in other ways, and in larger numbers? The other tack taken by the revisionist historians is to say that Japan was ready to surrender before the atomic bombs were dropped. The most obvious question is, why didn't they do it then? Indeed, why didn't they do it after Hiroshima was bombed, and thereby spare Nagasaki?
That's a good point.
Whatever negotiations
That is a good point because they threw two bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The first one, they didn't want to just surrender. So you need to throw another one, I guess.
May have been going on behind the scenes, surrender was by no means a done deal. Even after both cities had been destroyed, it took the unprecedented intervention of the emperor himself to get the military men to agree to surrender. And even as the
Wow.
emperor's message was being broadcast, some military officers were killed trying to storm the studio where the broadcast originated. The real question is
Wow.
not whether Japan was willing to negotiate some kind of end to the war, but whether it was ready to accept the terms being offered, which
Mm.
involved not merely military capitulation, but acceptance of American occupation of their homeland. It was this occupation, like the occupation of Germany, which turned a militaristic nation that had launched several wars in recent times into a peaceful and democratic country.
Mm.
This was an historic achievement made possible by the terms of surrender, which in turn were made possible by the two atomic bombs. On net balance, this saved not only American and British lives, but even Japanese lives, not to mention the lives of people in Asia, like our
Damn.
Chinese-American schoolteacher who told a bitter truth which the anointed did not want to hear.
Wow, man. Wow, this is hard to swallow. Wow. Thomas Sowell again, he's killing it with these things. I mean, makes sense. Which one do you prefer? A more aggressive Japan with a strong pride, or less aggressive, still with pride Japan? Oh my goodness, I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. Damn, you cannot think of Japan now. A couple of years ago, being like that. This is crazy. It might give you a perspective of what our country can go in the next 20, 30 years in just in a glimpse. Because it's still the energy, right? The energy of being a great country, but their energy was we are better than anybody. And even with the first atomic bomb, they didn't want to surrender. Second one, they 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 were not going to surrender. Still, the emperor has to come and say, "Hey, military, I think this is enough." And the military will say, "No, we're not going to surrender. This is crazy. It's crazy. A million soldiers, American million soldiers, and a million British soldiers. Man, this is crazy. This is a population control in 101. The population. Wow, 5,000 Marines against 100,000 Japanese soldiers. Crazy. What do you guys think? Comments in the comment section below. Let me know what's your opinion.